There comes a moment in every person's life when the enemy rises up, when everything familiar begins to fall apart, when the ground beneath your feet feels like it's splitting open, and you start to wonder, why me? Why now? You felt the weight of something dark pressing against your spirit, whispering lies, breaking peace, and trying to make you believe you were finished. But listen to me. You were never finished. Something evil tried to destroy you, but heaven intervened. That main message, you see, there are battles that never make it to the surface. You fight them in silence, behind closed doors, when no one's watching. You cry in the dark, yet still show up in the light. You face betrayal, rejection, sickness, confusion, heartbreak. And the enemy thought those things would bury you. But heaven said, no, not this one. This one is mine. That's why you're still here. That's why, after everything that came against you, you're still standing. Not because you were strong enough, but because God placed an invisible wall around you. While evil plotted your downfall, heaven was working your deliverance. Every attack you survived wasn't random. Every storm you endured wasn't wasted. The devil targeted you because there's something valuable inside you. He doesn't fight the empty. He fights the anointed. And if the battle has been fierce, it's because your destiny carries weight. The sickness was meant to take your life, but heaven said, not yet. The heartbreak was meant to break your mind, but heaven whispered, hold on. The depression was meant to steal your purpose, but heaven declared, there's still more to do. But heaven's intervention, while you were crying, heaven was moving. While you were doubting, heaven was defending. While you were breaking, heaven was building something better. What the enemy meant for evil, heaven flipped for your good. You lost some people, but heaven was protecting you from wrong voices. You faced delay, but heaven was preparing divine timing. You went through fire, but heaven was refining your faith. You see, your pain was not punishment, it was preparation. Your tears were not wasted, they were watering the next season. The enemy wanted to destroy you because he saw what you didn't, that your breakthrough was next. The turning point. There's a shift happening. You're not walking into another season of defeat. You're walking into the season that proves heaven has been on your side all along. The same hands that held you in the storm are about to lift you in victory. You've been attacked. Now you'll be anointed. You've been rejected. Now you'll be redirected. You've been wounded. Now you'll be weaponized. Every scar you carry will speak of survival. Every battle you fought will testify that heaven still wins. You're not the victim of what happened. You're the evidence of divine intervention. So rise up. Don't walk like a survivor. Walk like a child of heaven. Stop replaying what tried to destroy you and start praising what saved you. Shake off the guilt, the fear, the doubt, because your story isn't over. It's just beginning. Stand tall. Speak life. Life with fire. Because heaven didn't rescue you just to keep you comfortable. Heaven rescued you to release you into purpose. Now it's your turn to fight back with faith, to live bold, to speak truth, to shine light in dark places. The same heaven that intervened for you is ready to move through you. You were attacked because you're chosen. You survived because you're protected. Now it's time to step into the world and prove that heaven still reigns. You were not attacked because you were weak. You were attacked because you were carrying something powerful, something heaven placed inside you before the world even knew your name. The enemy saw it long before you discovered your purpose, long before you understood your calling. Darkness detected the light that was hidden in your soul. The spiritual realm recognized your potential. Evil doesn't fight what's empty. It only fights what carries destiny. That's why, even from the beginning, things didn't come easy for you. That's why people misunderstood you. Doors closed unexpectedly, and storms seemed to find you even when you were just trying to survive. Because when heaven marks you for greatness, hell marks you for warfare. The truth is, the presence of the attack was never a sign of your weakness. It was a confirmation of your worth. You are carrying something divine, something meant to shift atmospheres, something that threatens the enemy's agenda. That's why you faced pressure that others can't see, and battles that don't make sense. The greater the calling, the greater the conflict. When evil saw the seeds of greatness inside you, it sent distractions, disappointments, and discouragements, hoping you would give up before you ever reached your breakthrough. But what the enemy didn't know is that heaven had already written victory into your story. Think about it. The moments that almost broke you weren't coincidences. The sudden waves of fear, the crushing losses, the unexpected betrayals, those were all part of the attack designed to convince you that you were powerless. The enemy tried to plant doubt in your spirit because he knew that if you ever discovered who you truly are, nothing could stop you. You see, when you walk in your God-given identity, the darkness around you starts to tremble. So the attacks weren't random, they were strategic. You were being targeted because your future carries influence. Your voice carries authority. Your obedience carries impact. Every attempt to destroy you was really an attempt to silence what heaven placed in you. That's why it's important to look back and realize that every storm, every loss, every spiritual battle was a form of confirmation, proof that your life carries divine weight. Evil doesn't chase after the average. It goes after the chosen. You've been through fires that others couldn't handle. You've stood in places that should have broken you completely. Yet, here you are, still breathing, still believing, still standing. That's not weakness. That's evidence that heaven has been protecting something sacred within you. The enemy saw the crown before you did. He saw the future before you stepped into it. He saw the power in your prayers, the authority in your words, the purpose in your pain. And because of that, he tried to crush you early. He tried to destroy your confidence, because confidence leads to calling. He tried to wear you down with exhaustion, because tired warriors stop fighting. He tried to fill your heart with fear, because fear paralyzes faith. Every lie that entered your mind, that you're not enough, that you're too broken, that you'll never recover, those weren't your thoughts. They were planted by darkness to distract you from destiny. The enemy is terrified of a believer who knows who they are, because once you realize that your worth isn't defined by what you've lost, but by what heaven has placed inside you, every weapon formed against you loses its power. So yes, the attack was real. The pain was real, but it was never proof of failure. It was proof of favor. Something evil tried to destroy you not because you were weak, but because you were chosen. Because within you lies a fire that can't be put out, a purpose that can't be stolen, and a calling that can't be canceled. The enemy saw what you would become and tried to stop it before it began. He wanted to shut down your potential before it could bear fruit. That's why he attacked your mind, your peace, your relationships, and your faith. Because he knows, once you realize the power heaven has placed in you, no force of darkness can hold you back. You thought you were fighting alone, but heaven had already surrounded you. While you were crying in silence, feeling unseen and unheard, something divine was already moving behind the scenes. Every tear you shed was noticed. Every sleepless night was recorded. Every whispered prayer that seemed to go unanswered was actually shaking heaven's gates. The silence wasn't absence. It was strategy. When you couldn't see the hand of God, it was because He was positioning everything perfectly. Sometimes heaven works quietly so the enemy doesn't see what's coming. While darkness was plotting your downfall, light was already setting up your deliverance. There were moments you felt abandoned, as if heaven had turned its face away from you. You kept asking, why me? Why now? The pain seemed endless, the confusion unbearable. Yet even in your lowest valley, the presence of God never left your side. He was fighting battles you couldn't see. You were focused on the visible, the rejection, the heartbreak, the storm. But the invisible realm was where the real war was happening. Angels were standing guard over your life when you thought no one cared. The hand of protection was over you when danger came close. That near accident that didn't happen, that breakdown that turned into breakthrough, that betrayal that pushed you closer to truth, none of it was coincidence. Heaven was fighting while you were crying. Every delay, every detour, every God yet was heaven's way of protecting you from something you didn't know was ahead. You thought the closed door was punishment, but it was actually protection. Sometimes heaven will block what you want to give you what you need. You wanted quick answers, but heaven was building deep roots. You wanted escape, but heaven was building endurance. You wanted relief, but heaven was teaching resilience. The reason you're still standing today isn't because you had all the strength, but because heaven carried you through the moments you couldn't carry yourself. When you were on your knees, thinking no one heard your cry, the very walls of heaven were echoing your name. When you felt like giving up, divine strength was being poured into your spirit. Every time the enemy whispered that it was over, heaven whispered back, I'm not finished. You didn't realize it then, but the presence of pain was actually proof of divine activity. The storm was loud, but heaven was louder. The darkness pressed in, but heaven's light was already breaking through. There were people who walked away, and you thought you'd been abandoned. But heaven was removing those who couldn't go where you're headed. There were opportunities that slipped through your fingers. But heaven was saving you from traps disguised as blessings. Every unanswered prayer had an unseen reason. Every delay carried a hidden blessing. What you saw as rejection was actually redirection. What you called a loss, heaven called alignment. Heaven doesn't always show up with noise or lightning or signs. Sometimes it shows up in the quiet moments when you feel peace for no reason. Sometimes it shows up in the strength to keep moving forward when you don't know how. Sometimes it shows up in the small whisper that says, keep going. That's heaven fighting for you. Not always in grand miracles, but in daily grace that keeps you breathing when life gets heavy. You may have thought you were praying into empty space, but your prayers were building walls of defense around your future. Every time you said, God, I can't do this anymore, heaven replied, yes, you can, because I'm with you. You didn't see the angels that surrounded your home. You didn't see the hands that redirected that car. You didn't see the forces of darkness being restrained because of your faith. But heaven saw it all. Heaven responded. Heaven moved. Even when your faith was weak, heaven fought strong. Even when your words failed, heaven understood your heart. Even when you thought your story was over, heaven was writing the next chapter in invisible ink. What you thought was delay was divine defense. What you thought was silence was strategy. What you thought was abandonment was actually love working in ways you couldn't comprehend. Heaven never stopped fighting for you, not for one single moment. What you went through wasn't meant to destroy you. It was meant to develop you. The pain you carried wasn't punishment. It was preparation for something greater than you could understand at the time. Every tear, every disappointment, Every heartbreak was shaping you into the person heaven needed you to become. You didn't realize it when you were in the middle of the struggle, but heaven was using your pain as the tool to refine you. The breaking wasn't meant to end you. It was meant to build you. Pain doesn't always mean you've done something wrong. Sometimes it means heaven is stretching you for the next season of your life. There were moments when you questioned everything. You looked around and thought, why am I the one going through this? Why does it feel like every time I stand up, something knocks me down again? But what you didn't see was that every battle was building a new level of strength within you. You were being taught patience through waiting, faith through fear, and endurance through exhaustion. Pain became the teacher that no comfort could ever replace. Heaven knew that easy seasons don't produce strong warriors. It's the difficult ones that shape your courage, discipline your mind, and deepen your faith. That heartbreak that tore you apart wasn't there to make you bitter. It was there to make you wiser. You learned who was real and who wasn't. You learned to depend on God instead of people. You learned that love doesn't always come wrapped in perfection, but sometimes in pain that matures your soul. The loss you experienced wasn't just about something being taken away. It was about making room for something better. Heaven had to empty your hands so you could receive what was meant for you. Every ending you faced was secretly the beginning of something greater. When you faced rejection, you thought it was a setback, but heaven saw it as redirection. The door that closed in your face wasn't a denial. It was divine protection. Heaven knew that if you had walked through that door too early, it would have destroyed you. Sometimes the no's are the greatest gifts because they save you from paths that lead nowhere. The pain of being turned away built your faith to trust what you couldn't see. You learned that rejection doesn't define your value. It defines your direction. You've walked through seasons that left scars. But those scars aren't signs of failure. They're symbols of survival. They remind you that you went through fire and didn't burn, that you faced storms and didn't drown. Pain has a way of stripping away the fake and revealing what's real. It shows you who you are when there's nothing left to hide behind. It purifies your motives and awakens your spirit. Heaven used pain as the refining fire to pull the gold out of you. You may have felt crushed, but you were only being pressed into purpose. There's a strength that comes only from suffering. It teaches you empathy, compassion, and wisdom that comfort never could. It builds faith that doesn't depend on feelings. It grows courage that doesn't collapse under pressure. Every tear that fell was watering a new version of you. One that is more grounded, more grateful, and more powerful than before. Pain became your greatest preacher, teaching you lessons that no success ever could. There were days you begged for the storm to stop, but heaven knew it had to continue until your roots were strong enough to stand in any weather. You were being built in silence. You were being shaped in seasons where nothing made sense. And though you didn't understand it then, heaven was preparing you for what's coming next. Your pain was not wasted. It was investing in your future. It was strengthening your spirit, sharpening your focus, and deepening your dependence on divine power. What you felt as breaking was actually building. Every hurt, every loss, every moment of confusion was heaven's way of preparing you for the glory that's on the other side of the struggle. Everything that tried to break you became the reason you're standing stronger today. The same storm that was meant to drown you taught you how to swim. The same fire that tried to consume you purified your spirit and ignited your strength. You didn't just go through pain. You grew through it. Every wound turned into wisdom. Every scar became a reminder of your survival. And every loss reshaped your heart into something more powerful than before. The enemy thought the struggle would destroy you, but it ended up developing a resilience in you that can't be shaken. You are no longer the same person who entered the storm. You've been transformed by what you've overcome. There were times when you couldn't see past the pain. The pressure was so heavy that it felt like it was crushing the life out of you. You questioned why life kept hitting so hard, why people you trusted turned away, and why the things you prayed for never seemed to come. But each time you were knocked down, something inside you refused to stay down. Every disappointment gave birth to determination. Every heartbreak taught you to guard your heart with wisdom. Every setback forced you to depend less on your own strength and more on heaven's grace. What once broke you now builds you. What once scared you now strengthens you. You learned that pain doesn't always mean punishment. Sometimes it's the process of progress. The crushing moments taught you endurance. The lonely nights taught you prayer. The rejection taught you self-worth. Every experience that tried to destroy your peace actually deepened your purpose. The enemy's plan backfired because the pain made you dangerous to the darkness. You became unshakable because you faced what was meant to break you and you didn't surrender. You found power in your pain, and now that pain has become your testimony. The betrayal that cut deep taught you discernment. It showed you how to see people's intentions beyond their words. The heartbreak that shattered your spirit taught you that love doesn't come from people first. It comes from God. The failures that embarrassed you became the foundation of your wisdom. You discovered that failure doesn't define you. It refines you. Every mistake that tried to shame you ended up shaping you into a stronger, wiser, more compassionate version of yourself. The pain carved depth into your soul and maturity into your character. You now walk with a strength that cannot be faked, a peace that cannot be stolen, and a confidence that cannot be shaken. You realize that you can survive what you once thought would kill you. The storm that made you cry also revealed your strength. You found out that tears don't mean weakness. They mean you cared enough to fight through it. You faced moments where your mind said, "I can't do this anymore." But your spirit whispered, "Keep going." That whisper was strength, quiet, powerful, divine strength that grew each time you refused to quit. Every time life knocked you down, you got back up with more focus, more faith, and more fire. The pain didn't destroy you. It introduced you to the warrior within you. The trials that once terrified you now testify for you. You can look back and see how the very things that hurt you most became the stepping stones that carried you higher. The betrayal taught you loyalty. The heartbreak taught you healing. The failure taught you faith. You began to see that strength isn't built in comfort. It's forged in conflict. Every wound you endured became proof of your endurance. Every time you thought you lost, heaven was actually setting you up to win in a new way. You may have been wounded, but those wounds gave birth to wisdom. You may have been broken, but that breaking birthed boldness. You may have been hurt, but that hurt produced healing power within you. Everything that once tried to break you has become the reason you're stronger than ever. Not because it didn't hurt, but because you refused to let it define you. The enemy had a plan, but heaven had a greater one. There were moments when darkness surrounded you so thick that it seemed like light would never break through. You felt trapped, cornered, overwhelmed by the weight of everything coming against you. Every direction you turned seemed blocked, and every prayer felt unanswered. But what you didn't see was that while the enemy was scheming in the shadows, heaven was already writing the script for your victory. The attack looked powerful, but the protection was stronger. Evil drew its sword, but heaven had already declared the outcome. Every weapon formed against you tried to find a weakness. Yet every time, divine grace stood between you and destruction. The enemy thought he was in control, but he was only being used as a stepping stone for your elevation. You didn't realize it then, but every setback was part of heaven's setup. Every tear, every trial, every long night of waiting was weaving together a bigger story, one that ends in victory, not defeat. The enemy targeted your peace, your faith, your hope, and your joy, thinking that if he could drain your spirit, he could destroy your destiny. But every time he pushed, heaven pulled you back. Every time he whispered lies, heaven reminded you of truth. Every time he tried to crush your heart, heaven surrounded it with divine strength. You survived things that should have ended you, not by luck, but by intervention. You were never fighting alone. Even when you couldn't feel it, heaven's armies were surrounding you. Every clod of the enemy was countered by a plan from above. You thought you were being delayed, but you were being defended. You thought life was falling apart, but it was falling into place. The enemy tried to bury you, but heaven used that dirt to plant you deeper. What was meant to suffocate you became the very soil where your faith took root and grew stronger. The devil wanted to destroy your confidence, but heaven used the struggle to reveal your true power. You may not have understood why certain people walked out, why certain opportunities slipped away, or why certain seasons hurt so much. But heaven saw what you couldn't. Some doors had to close because they led to destruction. Some relationships had to end because they were draining your purpose. Some losses had to happen so that your heart could be purified from things that weren't meant to stay. The enemy meant it for evil, but heaven flipped it for good. Heaven took the chaos and turned it into clarity. Heaven took the pain and turned it into purpose. Heaven took your weakness and transformed it into worship. Every battle you fought revealed that heaven's power always outruns the enemy's plans. Evil may start strong, but it never finishes victorious when heaven steps in. Every time the enemy thought you were finished, something divine revived you. He tried to take your mind, but heaven restored your peace. He tried to break your spirit, but heaven filled you with resilience. He tried to silence your voice, but heaven gave you a message born out of struggle and soaked in strength. The harder he hit, the higher heaven lifted you. Every strike only pushed you closer to destiny. There were moments when you didn't have words to pray, yet heaven still interceded for you. When you were too weak to fight, heaven carried you. When you couldn't see a way out, heaven created one. The battle wasn't yours to win, it was heaven's to handle. The enemy tried to convince you that you were forgotten, but every move of darkness was being used to display light. Every storm you faced became proof that no power on earth or in hell can override the authority of heaven. The enemy may have designed your downfall, but heaven redesigned your destiny. The traps that were set for you turned into testimonies. The pain that was sent to paralyze you pushed you into prayer. The rejection that was meant to humiliate you ended up elevating you. Every time evil tried to close a door, heaven opened one that no one could shut. The reason you're still standing is because heaven always has the final word. Evil fought hard, but heaven fought harder. Darkness tried to win, but light never surrendered. Every attack became another opportunity for heaven to prove its power. You didn't go through all that pain, all those sleepless nights, and all those battles just to stay the same. Heaven didn't bring you out of the fire for you to sit in silence. You were rescued for a reason, redeemed for a purpose, and revived for a mission. Everything you've endured was preparing you for this moment. The moment where you rise and walk in purpose with boldness, confidence, and faith. The enemy tried to convince you that survival was the goal, but heaven is calling you to more than survival. You weren't saved just to exist. You were saved to make an impact. You've been through the valley, but now you're being sent back up the mountain, not empty-handed, but carrying wisdom, strength, and the anointing that was formed through every season of struggle. There comes a time when you can no longer live in the memory of what you went through. You have to start walking in the meaning of why you went through it. Every scar you carry isn't just proof that you survived. It's a sign that you're meant to lead others out of their pain too. What once broke you has now become your assignment. The very thing that was used against you is now the thing you'll use to help others rise. Heaven doesn't waste anything. Not your tears, not your mistakes, not your seasons of silence. All of it is raw material for your purpose. The same pain that made you cry is going to be the reason someone else finds hope again. There's a calling inside you that's been waiting to wake up. For too long, you've been doubting yourself, questioning if you're ready, wondering if what you have is enough. But heaven doesn't choose the ready. Heaven prepares the willing. Everything you've been through has equipped you for where you're going. You have the experience, the strength, and the testimony to walk in purpose like never before. You've been tested in fire so you can stand strong in faith. You've faced darkness so you can carry light. You've learned what pain feels like so you can be a healer for others. Every battle has prepared you to walk boldly into the next chapter, not timidly, but as someone who knows that heaven has your back. This is your time to stop hiding behind fear. Fear will whisper, "You're not qualified," but heaven already stamped you with favor. Fear will say, "You've made too many mistakes." But heaven says, "Those mistakes made you wise." Fear will remind you of your past. But heaven keeps pointing you to your purpose. You've been through too much to live small. You've been protected too many times to play it safe. Heaven didn't intervene in your battles just so you could retreat. Heaven intervened so you could rise and reign in the territory that was meant for you. You're not just called to survive storms. You're called to calm them for others. You're not just meant to walk in freedom. You're meant to lead others out of chains. You are a living testimony that heaven still intervenes, that hope still wins, that purpose still prevails. The strength that carried you through the worst seasons of your life was never meant to stay hidden. It was meant to shine, to speak, to serve.
Thank you for joining us on this spiritual journey. If this message touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to stay connected with more reflections that nourish the soul. Your presence here means so much. Come back soon. And let's continue to explore faith and meaning together.
To inspire, you were chosen to be the proof that what once tried to destroy you now fuels your destiny.
Thank you for joining us on this spiritual journey. If this message touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to stay connected with more reflections that nourish the soul. Your presence here means so much. Come back soon. And let's continue to explore faith and meaning together.
Feel it deep in your spirit, that pull, that stirring, that inner fire that refuses to die out. That's purpose called.